Hi, Bonnie.
Hey, Ethan.
It's good to see you.
Nice
Um,
to see you.
and hi, friends who are joining us now. Thanks for being early. Well, it's actually like precisely on time. So if you are logging in right now, thanks for being so dang punctual. And my guess is you do this elsewhere in your life, so it's not something that you are like given gratitude for. But I just want to say thanks. Thanks for being on time. I'm going to do a little check-in question in the box up here. It's going to pop up at the top of your chat box. The question that Bonnie and I just brainstormed together is, what is something that has surprised you about the pandemic? Actually, I'm going to add a word here because I want to make this a positive thing that has pleasantly surprised you about the pandemic, if you can find something. And Bonnie, I'm going to put you on the spot while folks are trickling in here. And I'm going to ask, is there anything that's pleasantly surprised you about coronavirus life?
Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Bonnie, and I'm in Seattle, and pleasantly surprised. I've had a couple. I think on a day-to-day level, the thing that I've been most grateful for that's been pleasantly surprising is that since we're all staying home, there are people out and about in the neighborhood all day, every day. I work from home and I'm a runner, so I'm out during the week usually anyway. But now I'm out and there's like 10 times more people.
Yeah.
And I've noticed so many more connections and conversations and people like talking to each other that normally wouldn't otherwise. And I've had a few exchanges with neighbors who I didn't know before.
Like people that you didn't even know like lived there.
No, yeah, but it feels like a village. My neighborhood all of a sudden feels like a medieval village, and we're all sort of just out and about and like talking. And there's not as many cars; it's quiet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm noticing there's lots of awesome ones coming in. Folks reading and walking a lot, playing cards and eating dinner together. Kathy learns that she actually enjoys being with her husband 24/7. You didn't say actually, Kathy. I said actually. Time for self-care. Yeah.
Baking, it's a big one. Love baking.
Yeah.
Huge.
Elijah's playing more chess. Hi, Elijah. Glad you're here. So we're riffing for just another 30 seconds. We're going to get started pretty soon. And then we're going to just go 80 miles an hour the whole time. I'm kidding. But if you're here for talking about productivity and entrepreneurship, that's what we're about. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. I'm Ethan. Hi, I'm College Essay Guy. This is Bonnie. Bonnie and I have worked together for the past 3 years, and I'm really excited that she's co-hosting this webinar with me. Just to give you a little background on her, she was unschooled for 3 years of high school, which I'll let her tell you more about what unschooling means. She studied history at Stanford, got an MFA in Sweden, which is like super cool just to say. Worked for 8 years as a producer and editor with the Stanford Storytelling Project. What else? I mean, there's lots more that I can say about Bonnie, but we'll stop there for now. Bonnie, will you, say hello to the good folks and set some context for this thing that we're centering this in called self-directed learning. And I want you to tell them like, what is self-directed learning, but maybe give them a sense of like how you came into it, just like kind of like a little snippet in terms of the unschooling stuff.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Ethan, and thanks everybody for being here. I'm super excited about this content because we've been working for months on it, and this is sort of the first rollout, sharing a little bit of it. My self-directed learning background started in high school when I realized I could be more productive outside of school than inside of school. That was very specific to me and my situation. And so after half of my sophomore year, I was there for a year and a half. I decided to do other things. And it's been an adventure ever since. I'm still a self-directed learner. So what is self-directed learning? Self-directed learning is a kind of learning that we're not usually accustomed to in our culture because we're so used to following directions and working towards markers of success, grades, money, promotions. But self-directed learning is a little bit different. Here's some characteristics. You follow your curiosity. So what are you interested in? Are you interested in graphic novels? Are you interested in birds? Are you interested in robots? And then you just go deep into whatever that thing is. You take the initiative. So like I said before, there's no external markers of success. There's no deadlines. There's no grades. So you have to just find the energy within yourself to make it happen.
Mhm.
You set your own goals. You determine your own learning needs. So once you've got your project in mind, you have to figure out how you're going to get there. What skills, what knowledge do you need to create your project? You choose and implement your own learning strategies. So those could be online classes, those could be books, those could be magazines. They could just be, mentorship. You might find somebody who knows the skill you want to learn and work with them. Or it could just be, like in the case of a musician, hours and hours and hours of practice.
Right.
And then finally, you evaluate your own outcomes. So at the end, when your project is done, you get to look back and decide whether it was a success or whether it wasn't, and where you struggled and where you did well and what you could do better next time.
One of the things I forgot to say that I want to quick say is this is about to get interactive. And so y'all are going to need some paper and pen. I happen to have a drawer full. I would spread it around if you all were with me right now. But if you don't have one right now, grab a paper and pen, because I'm going to lead you through an exercise. Bonnie's going to lead you through some exercises. And if you just like watch through these, they're like only kind of interesting. They're better if you do them. So find something to write with. While you're doing that, I'm going to ask Bonnie another question, which is like, talk to us about how this connects to pandemic life. Like, why do you think this is, like, why is this relevant? I mean, it's probably an obvious thing, but like, why now? Why is this an important thing?
Yeah. Well, before I move on to that question, I just want to say self-directed learning could be anything, but we're approaching it in sort of a project way. So, one way to really dig into it, a subject, an interest, is to do a project. So, a project has an arc, and that's sort of the container we're going to talk about today, is like tools for getting one project done. Why now? I think this has always been important. I think it's especially important not just because of the pandemic. I mean, obviously the pandemic means that schools are closed. We're all home all day, every day. There's not a lot of structure to our time. So getting these tools in place helps you organize your life, your time, your energy, and make something productive out of it.
Right.
But I think, we started designing this stuff before COVID was a thing. And I think it's important because the world is changing, and these skills of creativity and adaptability and self-awareness, and also just trusting oneself and one's creative judgment, these are going to be the important skills for the world that we're moving into, which is just going to be trickier to navigate.
Yeah, I've heard and been to presentations where people talk about the gig economy, where it's like, you do this for a little while, and you do this for a while. We've kind of let go of that paradigm in many cases of the sort of like, okay, you have one job and you do that job for 40 years. Now it's like, well, I'm going to do this for a couple of years and see what I think. And then maybe on the side, I'll have this side hustle, right? And so this is the water we're swimming in.
I also just think it can help make you a better person and have a more interesting life.
Totally. Great. Get us into an exercise, if you would. I'd love to get creative and start doing some stuff.
All right. So the first exercise that I want to do with everybody, I've got my paper here too, is called the idea inventory. So if you're like most people, you have 3 to 5 projects underway right now at any given moment. And you probably have 10 to 12 in your mind that you want to do, if not now, in the very near future. And those projects are knocking around in your head, bumping up against one another. And when you do have time to sit down and work on it, work on a project, you sort of sit there for a moment and you don't know what to do first. You don't know where to start. This exercise is intended to help take that feeling away from you. So one way to do that is just to get all the project ideas out of your head and onto a piece of paper. So if you have that paper, get it out. You can use a Google Doc. You can use the notes function on your phone, whatever it is, start writing them down. Write down all your project ideas. What's a project? A project is a process that you need to go through that's like challenging you in some way. It's something you haven't done before, where you're going to need to learn and grow and sort of step outside your comfort zone a little bit. So for me, say running would not be a project because I run all the time. Running a marathon would be a project because I'd have to figure out how to train for that, build my way up, sign up for a marathon, all those things. So I'm going to set a timer, 3 minutes. Does that sound good, Ethan?
Great. And
right.
Yes, that's great. That's awesome.
Okay.
I might ask you questions while we're doing this, but actually,
Yes.
if I talk, people are going to think that they should listen to us. And I actually want to have like 30 seconds of awkward silence where folks are just actually doing this. So I'm going to shut up for at least 30 seconds. And one of us will break the silence in a few seconds so that people will actually do this. So what are your project ideas? Write them all down. I'm going to write some of mine down too. And if you just joined us, this is not the silent webinar. This is actually, we're writing down all of our project ideas that we have that are kicking around in our heads. And like Bonnie said a minute ago, the purpose of this is to just get them out of our heads so that they're not knocking around. They're in a place.
These could be projects that you've wanted to do for a long time that you haven't started, projects that you've started and haven't finished. I have a few of those. Small, big.
Can I share some of mine, Bonnie?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I'm hoping that this will inspire other people. I have no idea if it will or not. One of mine is related to a college affordability tool that I want to create that's going to hopefully help some students think about the financial aid process. I also have this idea for a book that's on enoughness and like, when am I enough and how could I be enough? And like my relationship to that and to work and my family. And we're also thinking of buying property with friends in like somewhere near Seattle. I don't know if we've talked about this much, but yeah, that's another project that we're actively working on. What are some of yours? I'm curious. Do you have other?
Yeah, I have a big idea inventory that's mostly stories I want to write. I have a story that I want to write about the MODOK wars that happened in Northern California and my family's relationship to that story. And I have another story I want to write about logging in the Pacific Northwest, which is sort of relevant because I grew up in the mountains around here.
Cool. How are we on our timer? Are we close?
Oh, we're at 2:55.
So great. So what do we do next?
Okay, next. The homework of this assignment is to choose one. And this is a really crucial step, and it's kind of the hardest, especially for people who have a lot of ideas, to just work on one idea at a time. But I'm going to make a case for it really quick, which is that having multiple projects running at the same time in parallel, I've done this, learned the hard way, slows everything down. And it slows it down because it takes energy to transition between projects. Even just physically rearranging the items on your desk, but also mentally, like switching from one. I mean, a project is like a universe. To go from one universe to the other, you have to it takes a lot of mental energy to make that leap.
Totally.
So having multiple projects going at the same time just means that every project's moving really slowly. But having one project means that like all of that energy can just like go through into one project. It also means when you just immerse yourself in one universe of a project, you can use your subconscious mind to get work done on it when you're washing the dishes, going for a walk, taking a shower. All those connections that get made in your subconscious, like get a chance to sort of form so that that time that you're working on the project is even more valuable. You get to really sink into it. And once you get to make progress, you finish it, and then that is the start of a positive feedback loop where you get to build momentum as a project person who gets things done, and it can change your whole concept of yourself and your self-esteem because you feel like, boom, I'm done with something.
I love what you're saying. One part of me, and I imagine there's some folks who are listening who had the same reaction, where it's like just one, and like my whole system like was like clenched, because I was like, but what about all my babies, that are like, or like, the pots that I want to stir, babies that I want to stir. No, that's weird. And so there's some part of me that like resists this, and yet I know that it's good for me. Like, and I've heard these called sprints before, like where you pick a thing and you sprint on it and I tell myself, I forget this, but just because I'm not going to work on the other things for like a week or two doesn't mean they're not going to ever get done. It's like, I'm going to focus on this thing until I get whatever part of it done. The other thing that I found that has to be true is like, somebody's got to be pushing the boulder up the hill. And if you can like work with somebody else and push that boulder up the hill, and they're the ones then pushing, then they can kind of, they're handling that baby or that pot, right? But somebody's got to be doing it. But if you're trying to do it, like you said, for all these different things, yeah, it just sort of drives you bonkers and nothing gets done. So
yeah.
Loving that. Thank you.
So that's the homework part of that exercise. Pick one, do it this summer.
Pick one and do it this summer, and like, set a time container on it, right? Okay, I got an exercise. This is one that I invented when I was working with a bunch of students in LA. It doesn't matter where they were working. But here on your sheet of paper, you've got a piece of paper, turn it over. And I want you to, actually, you know what? You can use the same thing. We're going to turn the paper over in just a minute. But I want you to divide your life into separate spheres. And what I mean by this is like, my separate spheres in my life are like, I have a family sphere. So I'm writing down the word family. And then I also have like the work sphere. What else? Fun is another sphere. That's just like hanging out with friends. And then I've got like the sleep sphere, which is like, something that's really important to me. So it's like, what are the different, in my spheres, it could mean that it's like health for you, or it could be like spirituality, or it could be that, and it could be that those are separate, or it could be that those are together. It could be that one of your spheres is called self. So it could be like family is one, maybe family is not one of yours. That's okay too. Self is another, and self-work could mean whatever that means to you. I didn't list health, which is like kind of interesting because I just don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Like I try to eat healthy, but I get zero exercise. But spend a minute, and really less than a minute, but just a few seconds, and go, what are the different spheres of my life? Like the different parts of who I am. There's the family part. And really I'm looking at things that you spend your day doing. So if you're in school right now, you're probably going to have a school sphere. If you are, whether you're homeschooled or whether you're, when you're in a traditional school, it could be that like video games are like an entire sphere for you, if that's something that you spend a lot of time doing. So basically think about the way that you spend your time, put those, like just list those. Then I want you to make 2 circles. And I'm going to draw 2 circles. I'm pretty proud of my first circle. I'm not as proud of my second circle. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to take your spheres. So my spheres are family, work, fun, and sleep. And I want you to divide your circle on the left into how you actually spend your time. In other words, you can write the word now if you like on top of one of the circles. How do you spend your time right now? So me, I get about 8 hours sleep, to be honest. That's not true for everyone, but it's true for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write 33% sleep. This is how I actually spend my time. And I legit, sometimes I'll get 9 hours, some nights I'll get 7. That's the way I spend my time. Work, I definitely work at least 8 hours a day, probably more. So I'm going to give like 35% to work, if I'm being honest. My wife might argue that it's more like 45. But so I'm going 35% work. And then I've got family and fun left. Ooh, family is going to be a lot bigger on that one. So I'm probably going to go like 30% family. And I'm going to go what's left. I got like 2% left for fun. And it's not to scale. 2% fun. That's probably true for me right now, if I'm being honest with y'all. So here's what my life looks like right now. Here are my different spheres, how I spend my time. Sleep is a third of my time. Work is probably 35%. 30% family. I might be less than work. But notice this. Here's what I'm noticing about this is that my work sphere is actually bigger than my family one, which again, if I'm honest, is maybe true for me. And then I have this little tiny sliver for fun, which gives you some sense of what my life is like these days. Now, obviously, some of those are going to overlap. And there are things that I do with my family that's fun. But I'm going to call this like fun/me time. Like, what do I do that's just for me, that's not family? That's like cell phone games or whatever those things are. So don't wait for me. Go ahead and do this. I'm going to give you like half a minute to come up with your own chart. Are you doing your chart, Bonnie?
I did. Yeah, I did as you were talking.
Do yours real quick, and then I'll tell you what the next step is. What can I see your chart? What do you got?
Yeah. It's a little messy, but this is mine. I've got sleep on there too, because I sleep more like 7 hours.
Okay.
And then I've got exercise because I tend to devote a lot of time to that. And food is a big one for me. Cooking, thinking about food, making food, cleaning up from food. I have a daughter. She's 8. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Work general is here. And then my podcast I have here that I'm working on. It's really small, smaller than I would like it to be. And then I have a little bit of time with friends and a little bit of fun and then a lot of time with my family.
And cool. And as you just did this, what did you notice?
Well, I noticed, I think I noticed how small my podcast slice was. That's why I'm really realistic. And how sort of like work and family take up the bulk of my waking time.
Okay, cool. And so what I'll say to you is, and I'll say just to the group, thank you. I'll say to the group, like, you might be like pleasantly or sadly surprised by what you see. Like some people are like kind of proud of their pie graphs, and some of the people are like, oh my gosh, look at what I'm doing with my life and what, And so the next pie, the next circle, as you can probably guess, is we're gonna call this future me. Okay, this is not the future you that you have to be, but this is like if you were to imagine a different scenario, if you wanted this to be at all different, what would the spheres look like? Would they have the same spheres? And what would that configuration look like? So everybody who's listening, I want you to take a minute and I want you to, on this second circle, do a circle that like how you would, I don't want to say how you would like it to be, because that's really judgmental and that's going to make you feel like you're doing it wrong. And that's not the purpose of this exercise. But it's like, I want you to imagine another possibility for your life. Okay. So I'm going to talk mine out loud as I'm doing it. My sleep one, I'm actually going to keep the same. I'm actually going to keep 33% sleep, because 8 hours of sleep for me feels solid. And I think I'm going to keep the family one. That feels pretty solid to me. Like 30% family. Is that true? Do I actually spend 38 hours? I don't actually do that. Now I'm getting real with y'all. I don't spend 8 hours a day with my family. What do I actually do? So how many hours a day? 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 hours a day. So that's like half of the sleep one. So actually my family one is truthfully probably more like 17%. Ooh, that feels weird to me, because I'm going to put 30% for work. Ooh, okay, that's interesting. I'm going to add a miscellaneous one, because the when you talk about food and like other stuff like that I do, stuff that isn't these things. So I'm going to add like a miscellaneous one, 15%. And I'm rebudgeting my work time. In fact, I'm going to get real brave here and I'm going to go 27% work. So I add these up real quick, 40, 50, 67, 70. So I think I've got like 73. So I think I've got like 27% left, which is about what this looks like. What could I create with that? So what else would I like to bring into my life? So I want to expand my fun one to like 10%. I'm going to do 10% fun/me. This is me, Ethan, saying to you, Bonnie, and everybody who's listening, I want to spend less time working and a little bit more time on my own. And I could, if I wanted to get really specific, and we'll talk in a second about how to get more specific, we could do that. And then, because for the sake of time, I don't know what this extra pie piece is, but I know that there's probably some space in my life that I could be doing some other things other than working and just being with my family. So I'm putting a question mark in that one. So my point here with this exercise is that you don't have to know what it is, but suddenly I go doing this exercise, and this is maybe something that I would have known, but I can actually get a little bit more specific with it. Like, first of all, I'm getting more honest that I think that I'm spending 30% of my time with my family, but I'm totally not doing that. And if I look at this, what that tells me is that I'm spending twice as much time working as I am with my family, and I'm a bad father, is basically what I'm learning from this exercise. No, this is because this is not meant to sort of guilt you into like, you're doing it wrong, but actually looking at what somebody once said to me once, like, or I mean, I'm sure this is like a quote that's out there, but like, you are what you do, like how you spend your time, that is who you are. And so right now I'm like a working machine. So what could I create this in this space? I don't know. And that's actually a pretty good takeaway for me for this exercise. So you've got your now, you've got your future me. And that's just kind of a quick scan. Because some people might do this and be like, yeah, this is exactly how I want to do this. Now, when it comes to actually putting this into action, into like, how do you chart this out? That, Bonnie, you take it over. I want to give them this exercise, this ideal week exercise.
Yes. So actually, Ethan, you gave me this ideal week exercise and I love it. So in order to make time for projects, sometimes we just have to like schedule it in because our schedules get so full. So I want to share with you, I'm going to share my screen. I hope I don't mess this up. My ideal week. And this is like version 2.0 of the exercise Ethan was just doing. And this is sort of where you chart out the hours of your week. I'm hitting share, but it's not sharing.
It's not sharing?
Let me try here. Boom. Okay, good.
There we go. Cool.
So this is my ideal week for COVID, which is built around my daughter's homeschooling schedule. I wake up usually around 6. I go to bed usually around 10 p.m. I've color-coded mine because I like colors. And what this does for me is allow me to sit down at my desk at any given time of day and look over at my ideal week, which I have printed and put just above my desk, and say, what should I be doing now? Oh, it's 10 o'clock. It's time for me to work. So I have the time set aside to work. I've also blocked out significant chunks of time to go outside because I have an 8-year-old. She needs to get outside, and I need that reminder of, oh, it's 12 o'clock. We haven't been outside yet, likely. It's time for us to go outside, eat some lunch, regroup, and then we can come back, try to get some more work done.
Because the writing is so small, and some people who are, a bit more experienced might be like going like this. Will you just read some of these to us? Will you just take us through, like, let's take us through Monday?
Monday, okay. I wake up at 6 a.m. I meditate, usually until about 7. That's my quiet time. I drink coffee at the same time as I meditate. My daughter wakes up at 7 o'clock on the dot every day. We have breakfast.
Is this true? Does she actually wake up at 7 on the dot every day?
Yeah, I don't. It's just like this weird thing. She's got a clock built in. And we eat breakfast and we get situated with homeschool. She's got this whole program going with her school. So we have to open the computer, look at her agenda, get her situated with what she's going to be doing for the morning. Her Zoom school with her class starts at 10 a.m. and that's when I can come into my office and start to get stuff done. Cool. So I get her set up, boom, I come in, I work. Oh, it's 11:30, we haven't been outside yet. I get up from my desk and I give myself permission to take an hour-and-a-half break in the middle of my day. This is not my normal schedule, but having it written down just like takes a lot of the choice out of it for me, which really super reduces my anxiety when I have to make those choices. Yeah. And then once we've had lunch, we've regrouped, we've been sort of running around a little bit, then we go back to work and I get her set up with a project or, my husband does, and then we get some more work done. And then at around 4:30, it's time to go outside again. Mm-hmm. And then it's dinner time. And the rest of the day gets spent doing dinner, family, and I always try to read at night.
Cool. I love
so, yeah, I mean, it's just having it realistic for me is really helpful. I was thinking I should be working more all the time. And then I just realized, well, this is a unique time. So I'm just going to do what I can in, I don't know, what is this, 5 hours a day? And roll with it. Mm-hmm. So what I've done is I've made a blank copy of this for you guys to try out on your side. Ethan, how can you share this?
Yeah, I'm going to just share it. I'll throw it in the chat box.
Pin it to the top? Yeah. Oh, or I'll just put it in the chat box too.
Even better.
Yep. I go out?
Yeah, totally.
Good. So I'm going to set aside maybe 2 or 3 minutes not enough time for everybody to really sink in, but to sort of start working on what your ideal, week would look like.
By the way, quick tip for folks who are trying to figure out.
Oh yeah, make a copy of this. Go to File.
Yep.
And make a copy just like this, and then you can name it and save it in your Google Drive.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, work away.
One thing I'll say is, because some folks will want to do this and some folks won't. One thing I'll say of the value of this in my life was, people will say to you sometimes, so just visualize what an ideal week would look like for you. And it might take you like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, or, you do an exercise like this, but to actually put it down in terms of hours and to have that really mapped out and to know that this is mutable, like it's changeable, it's been, I was going to use the word enlightening. Like it's made me actually feel lighter. Some people will really resist this because it's a spreadsheet and they're like, heck no, I'm not doing a spreadsheet right now. But, and notice on Bonnie's, will you click back to yours for a second, Bonnie?
Mm-hmm.
I love that you have, it's okay. This is the second tab. I love that you have open work time, which is sort of like, that can mean a lot of different things, right? I also love your commitment to the outdoors. I don't have that same, I don't have those same, and I love that you made them green. I don't have that, although I probably could use it. And anyway, but the point of this is that this is not like something to like beat yourself up with. It's sort of like, hey, it would be cool if, this, and then to let it change, as you change. But what I loved about what you said, Bonnie, was that like, it sort of, in the entrepreneurial world, it can eliminate or limit some of you can basically create boundaries for yourself, right? If you're having decision fatigue of like, when should I do this? Because that's one of the things like you, I've really struggled with over the years is like, well, when should I work on this? Because all my time is open time, because I work for myself. And you students this summer are going to be working for yourselves, right? So this can be a great sort of boundary way of, or a great way of creating boundaries.
Yeah, that's sort of the tools that we're offering in this webinar is like, they're guardrails. They're sort of like creative, constraints that sort of keep you on the road and moving forward. Because otherwise you really can sort of get lost in the decision-making process, because every moment's a decision when there's no external structure. You have to create it yourself.
All right. So assuming y'all, you will not have had time to create your ideal week, you can start it.
Yep.
Our hope here was not to get you to like fully create it, but to begin, and your homework, if you want to do it, it's totally optional, is to create your ideal week. So keep us rolling, Bonnie. What else we got?
All right. The last tool, the fourth tool that I want to share. So we've got the list of ideas, and then you're going to choose one. We've got Ethan's pie chart. We've got the ideal week, and this is the fourth one, which is called 3 Things. I learned this from Jessica Abel, who's a creativity coach. And this is so simple, but it is so effective. Every day, before you leave your desk, as you finish work, you make a list of 3 things that you want to accomplish the following day. And it's magic. Here's my list. These are the 3 things I'm going to do today. This is my system. I have a little pile of sticky notes next to my computer. And so what this does is also eliminate the necessity to make a decision when you come to your desk in the morning, which is when it's so tempting to dive down the rabbit hole of your email or social media or whatever it is. You just like, oh, here's my agenda. Mm-hmm. You can also write 3 things that you will not do the following day, so that you can just sort of move those things aside. And for me, where I tend to like, waste a lot of time, not waste, it's not wasted, but the things that I tend to prioritize are like admin tasks. I'm like, oh, I've got to respond to email or, pay all my bills today, right now. Those things usually can wait. And I really want to use those most productive hours of my morning, especially because I'm a morning person, for creative work. And so if I write down I'm not paying my bills tomorrow, then I can just give myself permission, again, to just sink right into whatever it is the thing I'm trying to create.
Yeah, can I throw one more tool at them? Because
yeah.
I actually think we said 5 tools. So I'll make sure that we get a 5th one in there. So another guardrails thing, like what you're talking about, Bonnie, is this, I work in what's what are called Pomodoros. I don't always do this, but when I'm really trying to get a thing done, it's a simple 25-minute timer. You can download a free app called Tomato One, O-N-E, and not like you won a tomato. And what it is a 25-minute timer you set, and you decide, okay, I'm going to do one thing for these 25 minutes. So the way it's helped me is like, let's say I really need to get, for example, a blog post written. For example, right now I'm working on one on the COVID, like coronavirus, and should you write about this in your essay? So I would set a 25-minute timer and I'd be like, I'm only going to do this. If you're working within a tomato, you can't check email, you put your phone aside, you can't do anything. And then ding, the bell goes off. You got 5 minutes to do whatever you want. Go to the bathroom, get some water, get a snack. And then it dings again and you commit to whatever, that same action, or you can switch to another one. It's also helped me with my email boundaries, because I'm like, okay, this is going to be my tomato that I'm going to dedicate to just doing email, but I'm only going to do email for 25 minutes. And then I'm going to work on this other thing. So I strongly recommend this one. It's called, and there are lots of different ones, but if you look up Pomodoro, Pomodoro, and we'll email this out again, it's been a really great productivity tool for helping me, like you said, Bonnie, like eliminate that decision fatigue and just like, here's the thing that I want to focus on. And then it frees me up. And it lets me know that like, and it's not like I'm not going to get to those things. I'm just not going to do all of them right now.
Yeah. And, I think I want to build on what you're saying, because what you're saying about the 25 minutes is really helpful. It's not, I'm going to finish this entire blog post before I allow myself to get up from my desk. It's, I'm going to spend 25 minutes working on my blog post. And that way, if you say 25 minutes rather than finish whatever task, you can sort of check it off your list and get that little dopamine hit of like, oh, I did that. That's done. And then you can move on to the next thing. Again, it's all just trying to build this this notion of like a productive self and sort of believing in yourself and learning to trust yourself and like move forward with things.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
like getting little bites of success and giving them to yourself.
Yeah, and I love the what I won't do list. Like I could really use more of that. Now today I actually had a what I won't do is like, I'm not going to do email first. And then, I didn't set a clear enough boundary and got into emails. And, 2 hours later, I responded to a lot of people, but I hadn't done this coronavirus blog post that I wanted to create. So I could totally use a little more of that in my life. So before we get to Q&A, will you tell Bonnie, just give folks a sense of this program, this thing that is happening this summer, this course. Just to remind folks, everybody, it's pay what you can. This was something that, to give context, go ahead and share the screen if you want, that we had planned to launch as like a year-long program, and we were going to launch it in March, and it was going to be awesome. And then coronavirus hit, and we're like, so we decided to just, treat it as a course. And Bonnie's going to teach it. It's going to go over 4 weeks. Go ahead, take it away. Tell us about it.
I'm so excited about this course. It starts on June 9th. It's going to be on Tuesdays for 4 weeks. And we are going to give people all the tools they need to brainstorm a project for the summer and get it done. We are not going to actually probably be there for the duration of the project because it's only 4 weeks, but we'll sort of like get you launched for the rest of your summer. So, I'm going to scroll around this window. The first session is on June 9th. And we are going to brainstorm ideas. Sorry, I'm scrolling.
That's okay.
We're going to brainstorm ideas and talk about our strengths and sort of build some of those internal capacities of what it looks like to be a self-directed learner, and get you sort of prepped for your project. And then in the second session,
by the way, I'm going to link this to folks. If you guys are wanting to
thank you.
Stuff, I'm going to just pop it in the chat box if folks want to see more about this.
So the second session is really about how to do research and setting realistic goals and pitching ideas. And then we're going to have a moment in the second session to get live feedback on your ideas. So that'll be from me and from the peers in the group. The third session is tools for getting stuff done. We touched on some of those today. We're going to spend more time doing that, and there are a lot more tools that we're going to give students during this third session. We're also going to talk about writing a mission statement and the importance of a clear mission statement. And then in the fourth session, we're going to review students' mission statements live, and then we're going to connect them with accountability buddies. We haven't talked about accountability buddies yet, Ethan, but One way that a lot of people find sort of their productive routines is by having what we call an accountability buddy, which is somebody who you meet with on a weekly basis or a monthly basis to check in about your goals. So students in the course will be matched up with an accountability buddy if they would like. We're also going to talk about advice for finding a mentor and building a team. And with that, we will launch you into the rest of your summer.
And life.
And life.
I've had so many accountability buddies over the years. I've had probably, I don't know, I want to say like at least 10. And accountability buddies are awesome. And part of what we're going to do is like, what's kind of interesting about these summer courses is that you may not expect it. And even though it's virtual, you're going to kind of form like a little, a cohort, depending on how sort of involved and how much you engage in the exercises. But there will be some folks that you just jive with, and you'll just kind of go, oh, this person's like, I love the way this person thinks. And we're going to be pairing students up. And what else? Pay what you, I want to say something about pay what you can. Like some folks they're like, oh, but I feel bad, and what we want to say to you is like, we want you on the course. If you want to take this course, take it. All you have to do is click pay what you can, and then you enter whatever amount you want to pay for this. So that's how much we want this to be like open access to folks. We don't want money to be a barrier for anybody. So that's why we're doing it. That's how we roll. Core value, #core values, #access. Sorry. What else? Is there anything else we want to tell them about this before we Q&A it? They're going to get some cool stuff done. I don't know. Let's open it up to, go ahead.
Let's open it up to Q&A. No, I think.
Questions y'all have? Ooh, here's a good one. What do you recommend for avoiding procrastination?
That is
a great word. I'm going to read some of these others. What were the 2 links for the ID week? Oh, we'll get that one. That's kind of a logistical one. So I'll go first on this one because I have something to say about this one. So you are looking at a huge procrastinator. This is the guy who, I don't know if you know this about me, Bonnie, but like I like was so bad. I didn't turn my college application in on time. Like it was late because I was just putting it off. So there are a few different tricks that I've used, and I've got a whole blog post on this, which I'll post in just a second. But one of the things that I procrastinated, is like doing like sort of daily things. And so what someone said to me once, I was in some like workshop, and she was like, cleaning is like a big thing for me. And I used to never clean. And then I decided to clean 3 times a day for 5 minutes each. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, I could do that. And so I've applied that thinking to other areas of my life where I'm like, okay, if I can just do 5 minutes on this, then oftentimes I kind of get into it and I'll spend a little bit more. But I think I have to remove the barrier that it's going to be like this huge task. So oftentimes when I'm procrastinating, it's because I think the thing is going to take me like 6 hours. And I'm like, and I'm so overwhelmed by it. But you'll find, kind of snowball effect. If you just get started on it and you go, okay, I'm going to spend 5 minutes on this. Or if you want to use that tomato one-timer and just spend 25 minutes on it, that's usually if you don't want to spend, that's like if you want to not spend too much time. But if you'll just spend, you can even set your timer for 5 minutes and go, okay, I'm going to do this thing that I don't want to do for 5 minutes. I find a great way to do it. And also the other thing that I tell myself, and this is in the blog post that I'll share, oftentimes I'm procrastinating because I want to do it perfect or I want to do it right. And I've got this perfectionistic tendency. And somebody else really wise once said to me, Ethan, just get a B. I think she actually said get a C, but that was too hard for me. She's like, so in my mind, I'm like, get a B. So you don't have to get an A+ in every single thing. Just get a B. And sometimes I'll apply that to like certain emails when I'm like finessing and fussing about like, I want to say it in the perfect way. I just need to send the email. Like that's the most important part of it. Do you have anything to add to that, or should I hop to another question?
I think the one thing that I would add would be that I think procrastination is a manifestation of anxiety, and that anxiety sort of leads to procrastination, and then procrastination then creates anxiety, and it can be sort of negative loop. And so all of these guardrails, all of these tools that we can sort of build up, and like muscles that we can build up and use, like those will sort of like turn that like loop off. And so even just, like you're saying, sitting down 5 minutes, like just eliminating sort of like the question of what you're going to do next, just focusing on one thing, I think can sort of nip that loop in the bud.
Mm-hmm. Here's a great like ironic one from someone named Hawkins. Here's a question. Isn't it ironic that in order to learn about self-directed learning, you need a teacher? And I guess I would say like, yes, maybe, or maybe not. Like the other thing I'll say is like, if you are a self-directed human who doesn't need a teacher, you totally don't need a teacher. Just go learn and go try and go do stuff.
Yeah, you do not need a teacher for self-directed learning. However, community and support is so stellar. It can just really be the catalyst that gets things launched. Camaraderie and sort of the creativity that comes around with bouncing around ideas with peers can super help the process along.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer asks, is there a problem doing a project that's based on a video game? We might need more information from you on that, Jennifer. So I might like ask you to like type in some more. Can you say more about that? You know, and then that'll help us answer your question. In general, I would say like, it depends on what you're doing it for. Like, what are your reasons for doing it, right? Like, are you doing this because you're trying to like do it, like, you know, impress colleges, in which case you might need to adapt it in a particular way. And there are ways of doing that. Like you can make some kind of philanthropic, you know, angle to it, for example, or, you know, but if it's like, if you're following your learning, what I would ask Jennifer is like, what are the values that are driving you? And if you can connect to that why, then that's almost never going to be wasted time. I mean, even if it's like just fun or just hanging out, like that's for me, like a core value is like fun. I'm like not spending enough time doing it, but I guess I would ask you, Jennifer, like what are the core values around why you're doing it? You need a list of values if you're wondering what the heck is he talking about. I'll throw one into the chat box, but that might help get you centered on like the why behind it. Okay, here's an interesting one. So Vilna's asking, by the way, Vina said that she did Pomodoros yesterday all day and was surprised at how fast the time went. Vilma, what kind of project, this is for you, Bonnie, what kind of project would be best for preparing for college in the fall? Financial, academic, mental? What is your sense? I mean, this is one of those loaded questions. But let's say, let me try and frame it. I'm going to guess what Vilma's saying is like, how do I actually prepare for thinking about like the college experience? What kind of project should I do? Rather than like trying to get into college, how do I prepare for like actually being in college? I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Ooh, that is such a good question. How do we prepare for college? I think I would go back to what you were saying, Ethan, about your values. So what are your core values, Vilma? And how can you connect a project to those values? Because I think that the more you can sort of dive into your own interests and build out those different parts of your resume, but also your character, the more sort of grounded and sort of situated in yourself you'll be for college. I think a lot of people get to college and don't quite know what they want to do or why. And so you can waste years and thousands of dollars experimenting in college when you have a more clear idea of what your values are and how those can translate into actionable goals. You can just like get to college and just like hit the ground running.
Another one that I want to touch on is like, it depends on, closely related to values, I think, are needs. And so there's an exercise that Bonnie and I love and we do with students called the feelings and needs exercise. And so Vilma, I don't know if you are a parent, counselor, student, or what, but the exercise, the feelings and needs exercise for me taps into, so the way that it normally works is, here's a challenge that I faced. Here's a way that it impacted me in my life. Here's the way that it made me feel. Here's what I needed, like, you know, where I think that feeling came from. Here's what I did about it. And here's what I learned. So that's kind of the broad version of how feelings and needs works. But you can kind of do the feelings and needs exercise looking ahead to college. So for example, a challenge that I'm 16 years old and I'm anticipating having is, you know, let's say that it's financial. Like I'm worried about not having enough money going into college. This was a question that I had. And so what is the challenge? Not having enough money. What are the effects of that on my life? Okay, I'm anticipating that the effects will be sorry, let me not get into feelings just yet. The effects will be that I have to eat in the dining hall. Okay. More effects of not having enough money. I will have to, you know, go shopping for, you know, low cost things like ramen noodles, right? So I would make a list and I'm sort of projecting into the future of what I think the impacts would be. And then how do I imagine feeling about that? Okay, if I'm 16 years old, I'm imagining, or like I said, I'm 17, I'm imagining feeling shame and some sadness and maybe a little bit of like low level anger. And also like some kind of like leaning forward, like wanting to do something about it. So what are the needs connected to that? what do I need? Like what's underneath each of those? And we could go deeper with this, and it would take a little bit longer, but what are the deeper needs connected to that? And the video that I just pasted will walk you through this. And the most important part, which answers your question more directly, is, so what could I do about it? How could I address each of those feelings and needs? So if my feeling was, let's say, like feeling scared or feeling like not enough or shame, what is the need? The need is for like certainty or security, right? And so how could I get more certainty or more security around money? Well, I could maybe get a job. Like, could I get an on-campus job? And so I know it sounds like kind of a tedious process, but it actually slows down and it helps me go, okay, well, what are these things that I could actually do? We can apply this in future thinking, sort of dreaming mind, to the stuff that we're doing this summer. So in other words, if I'm imagining across, thinking ahead to the summer, if money is something that's going to be a problem for me, how could I therefore get that need met, early on? What could I do? So in terms of your question, financial, academic, I forget what the other one you listed was, mental, I would say work through a thing to figure out, to do kind of a self-reflection, self-assessment exercise. And this is one of my favorites. It takes about 10, 15 minutes, and figure out what your needs are. And then you get to go through the creative process of going, okay, how could I creatively meet some of those needs? Yeah, that's my thought on that one. Jennifer, your question came in right as Bonnie was saying. I think what is our answer to this is, how do you stop doing things for colleges and more for yourself? I mean, this seems like a great opportunity to like turn inwards toward what are my values and what, how can I be motivated by those? Now, being motivated for colleges is not actually a bad thing. But what I would say is, like, whether you're a student or parent or, a counselor, is I would ask, when you're thinking of doing things for colleges, like, what are those values? Like, is there some notion of success, or is the value like, because my family wants to? Because those are like legit values, but I would break down doing it for college, like what that actually means. And there are also, just to give that other exercise, that feelings and needs exercise can be a great one to kind of suss out, well, what are those needs that I'm trying to meet? Am I trying to impress somebody, and how could I actually, if that's a need that I have, like to get my parents' approval, is there another way that I could meet that need besides getting into Stanford? Okay, here's a question from G. If we're not sure, Bonnie, I'll let you take this one, what our interests are, will the summer course help us identify our passions?
I hope so. That is my strong hope. And you do not have to come to the summer course with a project in mind or even knowing what all of your passions are. But that whole first session is really dedicated to sort of that deep dive into oneself and asking those big questions of what really excites me? Where do I really get, turned, where do I, not turned on, sorry. Where does my brain get turned on? And and not just like inside, but outside in the world. What are the problems in the world that I care about most, that I want to make a difference in? Because that's the second part of this equation is, how can we make the most positive difference in our communities and in the world? So we spend some significant time sort of diving into that in the short course. Significant being 1 week for the first week before we get into action mode.
Mm-hmm. There's Sarah says, I love the idea of starting a podcast, but I don't know how to spread it. Is that something that she could work on this summer, potentially?
Yes, a podcast is a great idea. I saw another podcast.
Michael said something.
Michael said something about a podcast as well. I'm also working on a podcast. Even has a podcast. Podcast is a great medium. It's lower sort of entry threshold than, say, film. You can sort of just do it with pretty minimal equipment and tools. So yes, figuring out how to spread it, we would add that to your to-do list. Distribution, marketing, distribution. So that would just become, a question to answer in your project process.
This is Grace asks, is it strictly a cohort or group program, or are there any one-on-one opportunities for this? And I'll take this one. Yeah, Grace, if that's something that you're interested in or that your students interested in, just email us. You can respond to the email that goes out about this. There is an opportunity to just work one-on-one with Bonnie, if that's something that you'd like to do. Let's see. Etoile asks, how do you kickstart a project that seems too colossal? This is for you, Bonnie, to take on in one summer, like writing a book.
That is a great question. I've never written a book. Ethan has, but I'll answer it, which is that is perfectly okay to work towards a long-term goal. And the way that we would probably suggest doing that is to break it into phases. So one big project can be many smaller projects, and each of those projects can have many parts. Projects that take years can have, a million moving parts. And what we're trying to help you build is a system for getting those out of your head and onto a piece of paper or a screen or a spreadsheet or whatever it is, so that you can sort of start ticking off those boxes and making real progress on it. So breaking it into part 1, part 2, part 3, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and just working through it systematically day by day, making little bits of progress.
Yeah. It's fun for me, just to speak to the writing a book one, to think about a thing that I can get done in like 30 days. This is something that Bonnie's going to walk you through this summer, but it's like, what is the 30-day chunk that I could do? And for me, like writing a book, it would be like, okay, in 30 days, I could probably have a really solid, let's say, outline, or I could have my table of contents done. Now you might be like, well, you could do that in a day, right? Well, it depends on the book. And for this last book that I just wrote, that just showed up at my house yesterday, it's like, that's how brand new this is. Yeah. It took, for 30 days, I basically like created the table of contents on a Google spreadsheet. And then I Google linked to all these, and Bonnie helped me edit it. I Google linked to all these separate pages. And then that was really easy to change. And what I really liked about that is that it made it suddenly like all these little tiny chunks that I could like move around in a really easy way. So depending on the kind of book that you're writing, I would say decide what you can get done. And like Bonnie said, like in a chunk, decide what you can get done this week, or what can you get done.
And 30 days is such a manageable chunk. So that's usually the system we're going to, I think, move into is like 30-day goals. And then every 30 days you get to reassess and set new goals.
Nora asks, how can we plan our week to still be organized while providing for leniency and for extra activities? So how do you do that in your ideal week, Bonnie? Are you super hardcore with it? Or, and also one little thing that I'll point out about Bonnie's sheet is that she does have things that say like open work time. And that could mean lots of things, because work doesn't necessarily have to mean you're at your laptop and you're reading thing. It could mean, like, for me, sometimes open work time means going for a walk because I'm still kind of working. But in terms of like extra activities, I think, what's useful for me in the entrepreneur life is like going, well, all those extra activities happen after 5 p.m. Like when we're off this webinar in 3 minutes, that's open time for me. And I'm going to go hang out with my daughter and wife and probably eat something. But you can create those chunks that are like, I don't know exactly what's going to happen here, but just knowing when it goes from work time to, not work time is kind of what's key there.
Yeah. And I think, these are skills that take a lifetime to build. I've been doing self-directed work for 20 years now. And I still ask these questions of myself, but having a system in place helps me sort of trust myself enough to say, oh, it's time to work. Oh, something more important came up. It's time to close my computer and go do that other thing. So it's just practice, I'd say. And it's not always going to be perfect. And sometimes you won't reach your day's, goals of finishing these 3 things. And that's okay. There's also a capacity that's part of this, which is like self-forgiveness and getting back on the horse the next day and keeping at it again, even though you may have totally blown it the day before.
Yeah, that's such an important part of it. And I don't think that I've fully gotten over that one of like the self-forgiveness thing, because I still will hold the projects in my mind. So one tool for that actually is like, just like Bonnie said, create a things I will do list, create a things I won't do list. So one thing that's really useful for me, and this might resonate with a couple folks that are listening, is like creating a done list. So for me, at the end of the day, if I'm feeling like I haven't gotten a lot done, I'll actually just like physically write down and be like, okay, what did I get done today? So and then once I start to do that, I go, oh, wait, I can actually focus on the 12 things that I did get done rather than obsessing over the 2 that I didn't, because my perfectionistic mind will sometimes take me there. So let's call it, because we've got just like a minute left. And folks have asked, will you be getting a link? Yes, we're going to send a link with resources. My podcast, Michael, you can just Google College Essay Guy Podcast. You'll find that. Thanks, Bonnie. This was fun. I'm glad to have done this with
Yeah.
you. And I hope, folks, some of you will join Bonnie for this course this summer. You'll get follow-up emails and stuff. And again, it's pay what you can. We really mean that. We want folks to join. And,
We really mean that.
Yeah. And we wish you an awesome summer, no matter what you decide to do.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And thank you, Ethan.
Thank you. All right. Talk soon. Bye.